Hello, hello, hello. This is a new thing for me. I thought I'd give it a try. I very often see people working through stuff on their postings, and I thought I'd just use this as a little pop-up to answer some of the common questions that I see, particularly the ones that I can help with. And so this is a bit sort of, innovative, I'd like to think, but it's providing coaching. So I will be doing some others of these. So if you fancy popping along with any challenge you have in the future, then do, because I think this will be bringing value, not hopefully just for you, but for the others who will be joining. I'm looking at for people who join that they get about 15 minutes to explore what's going on for them and come up with the solutions, because very often we're just getting in our own way. And whilst we know that, we don't always understand what the solution is. I think you can get that right. So would it be okay just to talk a little bit about who I am? Some of you will know me. Some of you will think you know me. And some of you don't have a clue. And some of you don't care. And that's okay. I'm only talking to those people who are interested in the work that I do. I've been talking emotional mastery coach for several reasons. One is that I think we're missing a trick. There's a whole world and wealth of stuff out there about mental health. But invariably, when you suggest that you might have something that is a mental health issue, you are channeled down a tunnel that may be just too much for what's going on for you. Or people view you as having a weakness. You so do not. What you have is a learning problem. That's all. And what can be learned can be, unlearned. So I think if this helps, mental health, mental well-being is a spectrum from lots of it to none at all. And either end of the spectrum is not good. We all want to be somewhere in the middle. So for me, the trick that we're missing is the emotional content. Why? And I know this will bristle a few brussels about that, bristle a few brushes, excuse me. But the thing is, it comes from our younger years. Between the ages of 0 and 25, and that's not a hard and fast rule, by the way, but it's the guideline that says at this point, our cognitive abilities are not fully formed. We are still trying to fit in and understand our place in the world. I mean, at 25, did you know where you were going to be at 40? You might have thought you knew, but how many of you have achieved it? And for those of you who have, I celebrate you because that's amazing. But do you know where you're going to be in the next 20 years? We just cannot plan to that extent anymore. The world is just changing so fast. And what that's doing for us is causing us more problems with our abilities. And they're not valid anymore. So I'm here to help people deal with the emotional content which comes from that first 25 years of life, where the first 7 is about keeping you safe, and then it's about keeping you safe and fitting in. It's why the questions come up that do. Now, it's not to say you can't manage it in the short term, but I want to be able to give tools and techniques and help people get through what it is and actually, in some cases, clear it completely. That's my job. But today it's just questions, and I've got a couple of questions that I've had, and I thought I'd share them here. So unless anybody joins, this may not be the full 45 minutes with Q&A afterwards, but that's okay. When I prepare the next pop-up, hopefully you will get a semblance of what sort of things we'll cover. So one of the most common ones right now, and boy, do I understand that, is feeling overwhelmed. Is this you? Completely get if it is. Feeling overwhelmed is really strange. And I was talking to somebody about this the other day that I saw had posted something. 1 minute you're chuntering on, you're busy, absolutely you're busy, you're juggling these balls like you do. And then something comes from, side from the side or, you know, from a distance, and suddenly, bam, you've dropped a few things and suddenly you can't cope. Maybe a sudden client demand, or maybe you've suddenly forgotten that you've got something major coming up, or a presentation meeting. Who knows what it is? But you can be mastering all that busyness, and then you're not. And then you're overwhelmed, because where do you put your attention? I spent years like that. And I have to be honest, the consequences are not pretty. But that's okay. You're not in that position. And what I want to do is help facilitate you not to be there. So I think the first thing is, when you're overwhelmed, and the suggestion I gave this lady was to stop. It's counterintuitive, I know, but to stop, pause, step back. And I would say for at least 15 minutes, more if you can. And what you're doing here is giving your brain time to process. We have such high expectations of our cognitive brain, but it only holds so much data. In neuro-linguistic programming, they argue that we can only process in the moment, plus or minus 7 bits of information. And if you're overwhelmed, you've got way more than that going on, and you cannot process them all. So by stepping away, pausing, stopping, what you're doing is giving yourself time to process. Now, what I would recommend is to go and sit somewhere quietly. And if you can, stop the thinking. And one way of doing that is the whole mindfulness world, isn't it? It's focusing on something else. So maybe go and have a coffee and just focus on the smell, and how, you know, the cup, and how hot it is, and where you are. Get outside, enjoy the good weather, or if you can't get outside, sit somewhere pleasant. It's really important that you do this and take your mind away from work. As I say, it sounds counterintuitive, but trust me, what will be happening is your brain will process what needs to happen next. Very often, one of the things that I might do, and you probably do as well, let's get on the old phone, a little play on there, watch something funny, something light-hearted to bring your energy up. One of the things I don't talk about is how much I deal with energy, and, you know, emotion is in energy. And when you're starting to feel overwhelmed, what's happening is your body is starting to shrink in as you start to feel the weight, not the physical weight, but the mental weight, the emotional weight of everything you've got to do. Watch a bit of comedy. Lighten yourself up. Listen to some music. I don't know about you, but there are certain pieces of music that will elevate me no end. So by taking this time out to pause, to stop, to reflect, whatever you want to call it, to be mindful of something, then you can start to come back to your desk in a much better frame of mind. As I say, 15 minutes minimum, I would say. It gives time for the brain to start processing. Longer if you can. And I don't know what overwhelm feels like for you. For me, it was a heightened sense of, I called it stress. I suspect, looking back now, it was probably anxiety, but a heightened level of stress, because all the things I had to do in my busy world, I was a program manager for Vodafone, delivering a high profile program, which was, you know, upwards of 40 million over a course of a few years. But the point was, I was so stressed with all the different aspects I had to be dealing with, I couldn't turn off. And it was really difficult. Had somebody said to me to take time out, I would have said, I can't do it, I haven't got any time. But it's really important that you start to breathe as well. It's just crazy, isn't it? Because everything here was running 60 miles an hour. You've been there, you know that. And when it's running 60 miles an hour, what tends to happen? You skip lunch, you miss your gym session, maybe you're eating on the run. Problem right there is that what happens is you don't digest properly. If you regularly go through this, I would not be surprised if you said to me you had digestive problems of some sort, because what happens is your energy is being expended stressing about the work you've got to do, so there's no energy left to process your food. There's no energy left for you to breathe properly. And breathing is a natural process, but if you're stressed, it's all here, isn't it? I've got to do all this, or it's all out there, it's on boards and whatever. Hello, time to do something different. It's time to change what you're doing and breathe. Really deep breaths into your belly. And breathing out. And there is something called box breathing. You may be familiar with it. And if not, I'm just going to tell you anyway. And the idea is that you breathe in for 4, and then you can start to build up from there. But breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4, before breathing in for 4 and going round again. You might struggle depending on where you are with 4, but do what you can and just each time begin to slow it down. What are you doing there? You're biohacking your body at that point. What do you mean biohacking, Kim? What do you mean? What I'm saying is your body has got into a stress state because it's trying to keep up with your head. And let's be honest, nothing can keep up with those thought processes once they get going. But what you're doing is you're saying to your body, it's all right, it's okay, everything's under control. And the body takes one of its indicators for being okay in your breathing. So if you're breathing calmly and deeply, things will start to settle down. Your parasympathetic nervous system will start to tune into that and know what it needs to do. So small tweaks. So now we've got you breathing and acknowledging where you are, because it's time for you to go, oh, before you get back to your desk. And as I've just spoken about that, how does that make you feel? Has that made a change for you? Does that even begin to feel better? Just hearing it's okay to take a break. It's okay to give yourself time to eat and process your food properly so that you can then get on with the next thing. Because in the short term, it's not a problem. You can do it. And if you're young, you can do it. But let me tell you, once you get into your 30s, biochemically, you start to shift and change and things start to move. And suddenly it can become a problem. Not then necessarily, but at some point in the future. So just get ahead of that curve right now. So one other thing then, I think is useful is to have a look at that workload that is just, got you overwhelmed. And I get it if you're a solopreneur, you've not got anyone else to call upon. So you might not right now, but I would certainly ask you to think about looking at bringing on somebody like a VA who can take off some of your more mundane tasks. Could you collaborate with somebody you know well, and you share the workloads of the stuff you don't like? I don't like this, you love it. You don't like that, I love it. Start sharing. Think of strategies to deal with whatever's caused you the overwhelm, because you're already running at 80, 90 miles an hour when actually you've only got the capacity for maybe 65. But what you can do as you walk back to your desk, I want you to think about laying out, listing out, having a scan of everything you've got to do and prioritize it. Now, there are lots of prioritizing tools out there you can use, but you know, and you know, don't you, what's more important? What is it that's got to be delivered today? And you focus only on that. What needs to be done tomorrow, and focus only on that. Now, there will be loads of other stuff that's starting to slip, but what happens, and it's crazy, but what happens is when the brain is focused solely on one thing at a time, it can get it done faster. There's a study, I think, I'm trying to think of the guy's name. It'll come to me shortly, but he did a study on moving from, multitasking to single tasking. And they proved that the multitaskers just took longer to do everything. Because when the brain is focused and concentrating on something, it gives it 100% of its time. But as soon as something comes in, it has to stop that and move to the next thing. Get used to that, get that done, stop, come back, and then rethink about where it got to. Really crazy. Apparently, with computers, we think they can multitask. No, they just do one thing really, really fast. Crazy. But it's really interesting to know how your brain is working. So there's a little tip for you. Single tasks only, because even if you just give chunks of time to it, what you'll find is you'll get things done faster. Awesome. How does that help? Does that help you with your overwhelm right now? And if it doesn't, let me know. Happy to take back feedback. Or if you've got an extension of that question, happy to deal with that. So the second question that I've seen coming up, or it's not even a question, it's a state people are, for me, putting up with. Or they're saying it to talk about what's going on for them. And, I don't know whether they have actually got imposter syndrome or not, because here's the thing. There is technically no such thing as imposter syndrome. I know, I've said it now. It is a term used by a psychologist back in the 70s or 80s to coin a set of behaviors and thinking patterns, whatever. And it's never, a syndrome isn't anything medical. So it's just a term to describe a set of conditions. So if that's the case, what really is it all about? And I believe it's doubt. It's self-doubt. You do not believe in yourself enough to trust yourself. So what exactly goes on for somebody facing imposter syndrome? What's going on for them is they have somehow made themselves less than other people, other events, other things, and they're measuring themselves and judging themselves by another standard, not their own standard. Oh, hello. Whose standard are you measuring up to? Because if it's not yours, it really doesn't matter, because you know your standards, and you may not, but let's say you do. If they're not where you want them to be, then you can choose to raise them and understand what that looks like. Suddenly, that's just part of your self-development plan, is it not? There is an expectation that we're all perfect, or we should all be perfect. It doesn't happen, even in nature. Let's be honest. And I think there's this whole idea that if you're not perfect, then you're not doing a good job. Rubbish. How many people do you know who are delivering all the time? And the perfectionist part of them has accepted that 80% is better than most others. So if you're feeling imposter syndrome, which is about thinking that you're not as good as someone else, or what you put on is not as good as someone else, or what you've delivered is not as good as someone else, it's okay. I'm telling you, you're okay. All you need to do right now is to understand where you are. Where do you believe you could be better? Where do you believe that you're not good? And just as an exercise, I want you to notice all the things you're good at, and I want you to list all the things that you think you're really bad at. And when you've done that, and I'm going to, I've recorded this, so this will go online so you can listen to it again. I want you to go back and I want to ask yourself, is that true? Is that true? And you may say, yes, of course it's true. I've written it down there. I don't, my work's not tidy, or I'm always late, or, blah, 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 blah. Stop it. So you believe it's true. So the next question I want you to ask yourself, what is happening to let you know it's not true? We very often do not explore what's going on for us. And by paying attention to what's really going on, you can start to dig deeper to understand what's underneath that. Because let me tell you, whose standards are you measuring against? Or better still, what standards are you measuring yourself against? How do you know that you are not good enough, not important, anything that's contributing to your imposter syndrome? Your self-doubt. I think if you ask yourself these strong questions, I think you might begin to realize, actually, oh, okay, maybe I'm better than I thought, which is the great outcome. Oh, actually, I'm better than I thought. Of course. It's just an old voice in my head from when I was at school. A teacher told me that what I delivered was not good enough, or in my case, don't be stupid, Kim. I said something and they didn't like it. It wasn't wrong. It just wasn't what they were looking for as an answer. Hey ho. So it's something that's happened in the past. Somebody's told you something, you've taken that on as that must be true. The chances are it was an adult, or somebody in authority, somebody who didn't realize the consequences of what they were saying. Some of those things you might turn around and say, yeah, no, they're not right. Well, okay, let's not leave it there. What do you need to improve it? How do you know when you are believing in yourself? When you know the work you do is good enough, is 80% there. Strong questions every time will help you understand more about what's going on for you. How amazing is that? And then you might come across somewhere you just like, no, I'm definitely still feeling, very doubtful about that. Then seek out some training to close the gap to where your standards might be. When I've seen clients in the past and I've asked them about their standards, it's been really interesting because they're trying to match potentially a parent or an older sibling who has been amazing. And they're trying to live to that. What they don't know is two things. One is that they're not them. Did you ever hear the story of the fish who was told to climb a tree, and because it couldn't, it was told it wasn't good enough? It's just crazy, isn't it? You don't expect a fish to climb a tree, but you may not be the same personality. I've come across many accountants and bookkeepers in my time talking to them over the last 2 years, and I absolutely know many of them have gone into the profession not because it was their desired profession, but because they were led to it either by the education system, their parents, an expectation. certainly for those who have come from driven parents, having a profession was seen much better, whereas actually their personality type lends itself to something else. Now, that's not to say suddenly you don't become an accountant or a bookkeeper. No, what that says is you need to play to the strength that you have, not the strength that you're told you must have. You've probably got more than that in buckets. And secondly, know that the chances are the standard that you're living up to is not your own. It really isn't your own. It is somebody else's, in which case it's time to revise that standard. Where are you right now? And could you accept that as okay? So, okay, not brilliant. Okay, room to grow to better, great, amazing, whatever. But if you can accept okay today, how does that feel? Just for a moment, just sit with that for a moment. I'm okay. Because boy, I know, and take, in fact, borrow my belief in you that you're okay, and that if you need to do more, you can choose to do that. Because for me, you are okay. Boy, you've studied to get where you are now, haven't you? You've learned what you needed to learn to get where you are today. Trust me, you've got all the skills you need. It's just this other stuff that's not there. The body mind isn't all aligned up. So what's happening is for everything you think you're trying to make headway with, there's something getting in the way. Now's the time to stop it and say, I'm okay as I am, and just sit for a moment and breathe into that. Breathe into your heart. What does your heart tell you? What does your gut tell you? And if there's anything still going on there, maybe we need a little chat. Okay, I think the biggest thing you can do is challenge all the self-talk that goes on in your head. It's really important because, and very often that self-talk again is not yours, it's somebody else's. It's your parents, it's your siblings, it's your teachers, it's what was a close friend in the playground when you were 10. Not relevant now, and it's okay. Right. So I hope that's answered the question. If not, again, get in touch. Happy to have a conversation. I offer 30 minutes free because I do believe there are ways that we can get through this stuff. Right. The next thing I'm seeing a lot of, and I didn't think it was that, but maybe it is when there's something to do and you're just not doing it. Oh, procrastination, my friend. I know this one because I still do it. The power is knowing that I'm doing it and knowing I can do something about it. So it's the important thing, because procrastination is never just procrastination, is it? It's not a bad behavior. Hello? It's not bad. It's just a behavior. And we procrastinate for so many different reasons. One of the interesting ones that I learned, and I thought this was really powerful, and I want to share it with you now, is that sometimes we procrastinate because we don't have everything we need right now. And that isn't necessarily just information. This could be some creative idea around what you're going to do. It could be that you've got to learn something else. I don't know. You will do when you come to procrastination again. Procrastination can just be that you've not got everything you need right now to do what you need to do. And if that's the case, oh, hello, you can do something about it, right? Yes, you can. So what other reasons might you be procrastinating? Because you don't know what you're doing. I worked with a gentleman in purchasing, and God love him, he was overwhelmed, imposter syndrome, and obviously now procrastinating. And he'd be popping out for a cigarette every half hour because he just didn't know which way to turn. Now, his procrastination was because he was being asked by his management team for information, reporting, data, but the systems were not able to provide it. Now, for whatever reason, he didn't raise this in the first place. And consequently, the longer it went on, the harder it was to do. And he had to try and pull the data he could and then not quite make it up, but, come up with some reasonable assumptions around it. But it was becoming harder and harder. And I think he just didn't understand what the systems were telling him. He did actually manage to address that in the end, but sometimes you just don't know something. Is it the tool? Is it how to use it? Is it you've never done something before? Ask. That's what you got to do, is ask. Help. And if you don't feel comfortable within your own work environment, or as a business owner, you're not comfortable who to go to, maybe you've got a coach. Maybe you're part of a professional body who can give you some pointers. There are always people you can reach out to ask. Another reason for procrastination is that actually it's boring. Have we all been there? I think so. I know I have. I was never very good at the whole timesheet stuff and the reporting I did. And part of it was because nobody ever looked at it until there was a problem. So invariably what I was putting was not read by any of the managers above me as a project manager and program manager. So I just used to put anything. I'd repeat what was in last week's. I'd do a quick summary. So there was no due care and attention. It was right. Don't get me wrong. It was right. But there was no due attention given to it. And it bored me. So it was, if I could cut and paste stuff, I did. That's not good. But it was very difficult when the work that you're doing is not appreciated. And that was where I'd got. So it was boring. So it's a case of understanding how you can make it more interesting. Or if you must do boring tasks, here's the thing. Could you go somewhere else to do them? Now, I was very lucky. Vodafone had an amazing campus down in Newbury, and I used to just go off to the coffee shop. We used to have different coffee areas and sofas. I mean, this was just fabulous for me. I could spend all day in a coffee shop. So I'd go down there and do it. And I felt like I was doing something, I was part of something, but I was doing these reports. And it just changed the way I looked at them. So procrastination can be a boredom factor. Address the boredom. The other reason you might be procrastinating is back to my previous question on the whole self-doubt and imposter syndrome. What's going on? Ask yourself, what do you need to get this piece of work done? And you might be surprised what the answer comes up, because, and I've not talked about this, so this is really interesting. We need to trust ourselves more by asking ourselves questions. And the interesting thing is that the brain doesn't like an unanswered question. Now, it'll be a bit slow at first, slow at first, but it might be, might even seem a bit clunky. But I want you to ask yourself questions that are not necessarily answerable right now. What do I need as the first step to get this project moving or this piece of work moving? You may get the answer straight away, and it's the straight away answers that you want, the ones that feel like they filtered up from behind somewhere and come straight through. They will tend to be, oh yes, of course, they will tend to be insightful, positive, and encouraging, and you'll be more energized by them. Notice I'm talking about your energy again, more energized by them. So powerful, so powerful. You may not get them then. You might get them overnight, or worse still, at 3 o'clock in the morning. So have a notepad and pen by your side of your bed. But they'll come. The answer will come, because the unconscious mind doesn't like an unanswered question, and it will just search for it. Once you've done that, and you've sort of realize that you've got a process to move yourself forward, you might just be surprised at how much you can start to get that work done. The usual recommendations with procrastination are very much about choosing the right time of day. And I'm a big advocate of a certain time of day to do things, because that's your best time. That's when you work best. Now, it is said first thing in the morning, but not everybody's a morning person, are they? No. You might find you work best round about 11 o'clock lunchtime. Then do it then. Or it might be at the end of the day when, you've stopped answering questions, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, you said, right, now I'm just tidying up for the day, preparing for tomorrow. Maybe it's then. Find the time that works for you. And that's when you can at least think about the task and how you're going to get it done. I think probably that's enough for today. They are just my thoughts. I'd be interested in your comments on any of this. Certainly when it comes to procrastination, there's a whole raft of things going on underneath that. I haven't covered today. The limiting beliefs, the stuff that says, I can't do that, I'm not important enough for it, or I don't know how to do it, whatever. Those are the things that are really underneath at a deeper level. But in this pop-up Q&A, that's more challenging to get to. However, I can deal with the behavior and the thought process, and to a degree the emotions. So if you're feeling like you're procrastinating right now, I just want you to go quiet and tune in. What is it that you need right now? And just take a moment. Because you've got this. You can work out what those small steps are that you're going to take the first step. In fact, just focus on the first step. Back to the procrastination. First step. What's the second step? Do one at a time. And just notice what you notice about how that can start to move forward. Okay, so how was that? 3 questions that I've covered today. I'm hoping that you'll have found them useful. And if you've got any that you particularly want to ask me, either in relation to this, please drop them down below, or if you've got some others, and I'll do another pop-up when I've got a couple more questions. I hope that has been useful. Take care now. Cheerio.